Welcome to Lessons Learned, UK Sailmakers video and podcast series, where sailors share tips and stories that make us all better sailors. I'm Buttons Padin, and today I'm speaking with Stefan Voss, the owner of UK Sailmakers Germany. The loft is located in Flensburg. Hello, Stefan.
Hello.
Where in Germany is Flensburg?
Flensburg is right in the north of Germany. We are located at the Flensburg Fjord. It's a fjord belonging to the Baltic, and this fjord is divided in the north and southern part, and the northern part belongs to Denmark, and we are right on the southern part, which belongs to Germany.
But today's conversation, what we'd really like to do is talk about single and double-handed sailing, because I know you do a lot of that yourself and you've got some experience running some races there too. Can you share with us your thinking about why double and single-handed racing has become more and more popular in Europe and then around the world?
Yes, let's say short-handed racing is quite popular at the moment, and the growth is there since, I think, 10, maybe 15 years. So we saw in our area big fleets of ORC or former IMS boats racing, or we have also some local handicap racing like Yardstick or the Danish handicap racing, Dance Handicap. But we see that people, especially owners of bigger boats, have problems to find a good crew, and we as experienced racing sailors know that crew work is very important to have success and have fun on the race course. And if you have an unexperienced crew, you will not have big fun there. So it's one of the typical things with a very small crew or just single-handed, you have big fun.
Fun is the objective that we're all looking for. Okay, so you're talking about some good-sized boats there, which were designed and originally raced fully crewed. What do you have to do differently to take a good-sized boat to prepare it for short-handed racing?
Yeah, first let me say the motivation to go as a single-hand or double-hand short-handed crew is so that the people which are involved, the skipper single-handed or the double-hand crew, it's very demanding for them, but there are no excuses on the race course to say, oh, it's a crew, it all belongs to you, and it's never boring for you. So you have to keep the tactics in mind, you have to do the trimming, you have to helm the boat, you have to check everything, and that's very exciting and very interesting. And a typical crew which has to maybe sit on the rail for many hours, it may be a little bit boring, but this is never on the single or double hand experience. And yeah, how to prepare, how to set up the boat right. Sailors think very different about it. Some say, oh, I need a small boat because it's easier to handle. Sails are not so heavy, loads are not so massive, it will be more easy. Other type of sailors think, oh, a bigger boat may be more safe, more stable, and more helpful things like furling head sails, better instruments to get more information. But when we look through these single and double hand fields, we see that there are a lot of boats, say in the middle class, like boats between 30 to 40 feet.
That sort of tracks with what we see here in the US, but occasionally you see some people out there with a larger boat, a 40 or 50 footer, and you go, that person's got his hands full or her hands full. How did you particularly get involved with shorthanded sailing?
I started my career working really as a sailmaker on the knees, making sails by hand. So that's a long history. I was all the time interested in racing and in all type of racing, from ocean racing to the typical class racing, midweek racing. All big fun and very different. The first double hand racings we are involved was the Musto double hand racing in Germany, which was started like more than 10 years ago. And we as UK Sales in Germany, we were one of the main sponsors for this race. And the race was started in Flensburg, directly in front of our loft. And this was a race which was going through 2 days, 1 night at least. And it was a great success at that time. It was really new here. And I was, or my partner was, Dirk Manne was mainly in the race organization involved. And I was sailing with my former boat. It was a X31 at that time, the first double hand race there.
One of the things that fascinates me is what you have to do differently to the boat itself. How do you set it up differently? Do you use different sails? Can you speak a little bit to what you've had to do to your boat or your customers' boats to adapt them for safe and successful shorthanded sailing?
Yes, it's a big difference in the setup of a double hand or single hand racing boat. And I say very often double or single hand racing because this is not the same, absolutely not the same sailing this boat like this, but the boat preparation is very similar because very often also in the double hand racing, you are racing alone. Your buddy is sleeping or he's below decks or whatever. So you need to be prepared to sail a boat alone. We have now learned a lot during the years how to set up a boat really good for shorthanded racing. You need a very good autopilot. That's for sure a key thing. If you use modern systems which go directly to your rudder valve and have a nice gyro, they are working absolutely quite well. That's the first thing. But then the setup for the sails, it differs between the type of the sailor. Most of the sailors starting double or single hand racing would say, oh, they want to go for furling head sails because they can furl the head sail if they want to sail with the asymmetric spinnaker or with the symmetric spinnaker, or if they need to get the sail in area reduced. But the sailors which are a little bit more competitive and experienced would today prefer hanged on sails. So they can have a sail change, but they get rid of the problems you can have with the luff foil, setting the sail alone from the cockpit, from the mast situation. The typical brass hangs for many years ago are also not the perfect solution because they will create problems when you are jibing with the asymmetrical sails. So state of the art are a version of textile hangs. Soft shackles or Dyneema webbing, there are buttons types, there are various types. It's important that you find the right solution for the size of your sail. Some of them are very solid, but not so easy to dismantle. If you have a boat which has a staysail, then you will mainly sail with 2 sails and you will never get the sail away from the stay. So then you can have a more solid but not so practical version of hangs. A mainsail, prefer a mainsail with slides in the luff and with good slide systems so that reefing and hoisting is definitely possible under all circumstances. Also, if you're going downwind and you want to put a reef in for the next upwind leg, it's very important that this works. With a luff groove or bolt rope main, it will be tough to do this alone.
The question I had about the jib hanks, if I have a boat that has a headstay foil, do I have to take that headstay foil off before I put the hanks on, or will they go around the foil?
Yeah, to be honest, you use stay just for these options. And better go for a rod stay, because these textile solutions at the hangs work much better on a rod stay as on a typical wire. There's less friction on the rod.
Interesting. That's great. What are some of the races in your area for shorthanded sailing? I know that you run one and have sailed in it a number of times.
The Baltic here in our area is a very nice sailing venue, and we have a lot of islands here. Most of the races which were invented here in the last years are typical around the island courses. So that's interesting for the sailors, and it's always demanding because you have winds from all directions, not just in a plain upwind race or downwind race, and you have currents. So it's interesting. Invented since 4 or 5 years now, a race named Double Round for 2 people, but the first race we made was going around 2 islands, which was the other double in this name. The last 2 years, we sailed to another Danish island with the name Ærø, and we had a very nice partnership with the sailing club there. So it was a very interesting course, and we could set up different course lengths for smaller boats and for bigger boats. We tried to set the courses in a length so that mostly all crews came in the late afternoon to the harbor, so that we could have a nice evening barbecue party together.
That's always the fun part of it, the parties afterwards. If you're going on a longer shorthanded race, how do you provision the boat to make sure that you've got the warmth and the equipment you need?
Your success belongs very much to the details you're doing. It's how you preparate your boat. It starts with a good bottom fairing, as on all races, having the sails perfectly in shape, have your ropes, have everything fine, control your trim, your weather routing, everything. But the small things like clothing and food is very, very important, because if you have not done your homework, you will end up racing and not be concentrating on the key things you need on the race course. So, for example, clothing. We have 2 sets, definitely, one in spares. We always take the onion style, so we start with a bottom layer and maybe a medium layer. We try to avoid any cotton. It's very important.
That's something that I keep hearing more about. It's you want the polyesters which wick the moisture away from your body. Stefan, what about the types of foods that you take on these shorthanded races?
Yeah, it's very important that you have small portions of food, and it's much better for your condition at the day that you have a lot of fruits, that you have light food, yet you have sandwiches prepared, and that you have every 10 hours or every 12 hours a real warm food. You can use these astronaut meals. They are really nice and healthy today, and you just need hot water. And I made 2-3 cans full of this before the race, because I don't want to end up in the pantry just making hot water. I want to be concentrated on the racing itself.
By cans, you mean you've got thermoses of hot water that you can just use?
Exactly, thermoses.
That's really smart, rather than having to go down there and fuss with your galley stove. Stefan, when you're setting up the boats, particularly for nighttime sailing, are there any little tips or tricks that you use?
Yes, nighttime is a tough time for small crews, because you cannot say, okay, I'm going to sleep for the next hours. You have to stay awake, and we want to check also our sails if they are trimmed right, and want to find the right rope. So wearing a headlamp is something every sailor in the night is wearing all the time. I have a very small one. This is very light. It has also the chance to put on the red light there. So if you're sailing with another person, you do not make him blind, just looking at him, and you can see everything which is close by. And I have an extra tip. I'm using very small LEDs with just one spot, and I stick these LEDs into the sails close to the telltales, or I use it if I miss light in a special area of the boat as well.
You actually adhere it to the sail, or do you tape it to the mast or something like that?
I tape it to the mast, and I tape it directly into the sail close to the telltales. But it's important that you don't see the white spot of the LED with your eyes. The light spot should be directed to the telltale, but all the time from the back to the front.
What kind of tape do you use?
The ripstop tape, typical Sailmakers insignia, in the same color of the sail. And this sticks well if you put this on before the sail gets wet. If you see night videos from the IMOCAs or from the ocean race, they all use reflective draft stripes. We have reflective 3M draft stripes in the sail as well. You can see these reflective stripes just when you look with your headlamp into the sail.
That would be a special request when you're making the sail, I would assume. Great tip. The other thing, though, that you mentioned when we were talking about this earlier was the safety aspect of shorthanded sailing.
Yeah. Safety, all the time you're going sailing, even cruising or racing, safety is a very important aspect. But if you go double hand racing or extreme single hand racing, you should never forget, if you make one mistake in single hand racing and fell overboard, that maybe is your last mistake. So there's no question, this is tremendously important. So check your boat, check your lifelines, check everything you really need. We have personal harnesses. We wear them all the time. We have good life vest, and thanks God we have technique today like PLBs or personal AIS, which is a big advantage to what we have had 15 or 20 years before. If a crew member is overboard, immediately we can see the position and the alarm on the own plotter, and the AIS will provide emergency on all boats within a 5 nautical mile range, so they can react very fast when you have boats close by. When you go more ocean racing with bigger distances, the PLBs have the advantage because they work with the satellite systems. And our boat has also EPIRB on the boat, which can be used in emergency as well. But the first step, and I said again, never fall overboard.
This has really been very interesting. I love talking about shorthanded sailing. Let me ask you one final question, and that is, if I was a boat owner and I wanted to get into shorthanded, either single or double-handed, how do I take that first step?
It's a very good question, because when I started, not with double hand, but with single hand racing, I made really self-testing on the water. I went out and I tried all the maneuvers, and that's very important. And I find out that way that to maneuver, like setting a Spinnaker or setting a Janaka, or even more critical, getting the sails down to the deck, is absolutely not the same as I would do it with the crew. So I trained a lot, and I also talked to other sailors, and if you're smart enough, you will find other solutions as well.
When you set and retrieve your Spinnaker, do you use a dousing sock or do you use a different technique?
For not so over-experienced sailors, I would always say a dowsing sock is the perfect alternative, not only for dowsing, but also for jibing in a little bit more breeze. I personally not use a dowsing sock. I found safe techniques to work without this. I mostly use the envelope douse so that we get the sail in between the loose-footed main and the boom.
Yeah, the letterbox, exactly. Another thing that we should mention, on UK Sailmakers website under the how-to section, there are videos on shorthanded sailing, videos on Spinnaker takedowns with the letterbox or the envelope, as you were calling it. They're there for people to enjoy and learn from. Stefan Voss, thank you very much. This is really interesting. If anybody has any questions, they can contact you through UK Sailmakers.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you, Buttons.